What's up, everybody? Nate here, and we are officially in July. Now, July of 2022 might end up becoming the most important month of 2022 so far. In this video, I want to explain exactly why this month is so crucial to the future of our economy and for the American people, and I want to give you a few dates that you need to mark down and keep track of in order to keep an eye on everything that's going on. All of the dates that I'm going to mention in this video are extremely important to our economy and financial future because they're going to basically become the benchmark of our financial health and the health of our economy. So you're going to want to keep an eye on all of these dates in July 2022 because they're going to affect your money. They're going to affect your assets like your investments in the stock market, commodities and real estate, and of course cryptocurrency. So make sure to mark all of these dates down. Starting with July 8th, we have the employment/unemployment report being released in the United States. This one is going to be accompanied by the number of job listings, and it's going to show us how much businesses are holding on to their employees. Are we starting to see massive layoffs and massive unemployment in the United States based on the recession and lack of sales and lack of profits from a lot of these companies, or are things still in a pretty good position all throughout the country? We're going to be able to figure that out from the unemployment or the employment report. Like I said, that releases on July 8th. Right now, unemployment in the United States is hovering around the 3.6% mark. That is a multi-decade low. We haven't seen unemployment this low in the United States since around the 1960s. That means a lot of Americans are employed and they're spending a whole lot of money, but businesses have been feeling the squeeze because of the Federal Reserve and because Americans are not spending a whole lot of money. So they hired a bunch of people in 2021 and they're struggling to keep them in 2022. So we can probably expect this unemployment number to go up in the United States. So keep an eye out for that on July 8th. Next up, we have the ever important CPI report for June 2022 releasing on July 13th. This is the CPI report, which is the Consumer Price Index, and it's going to show us how prices in the United States for all of our goods and services are going up or going down. On the last CPI report for May of 2022, inflation hit an over 40-year high of around 8.6%. It did actually decrease on the April report down to around 8.3%, but then it went right back up. So this is going to be a very, very important inflation report for the Federal Reserve. They need to figure out if their aggressiveness with their interest rates and their monetary stimulus is working in our economy. And if inflation continues to go up, well, then they have to get a lot more aggressive. They have to raise their rates even more, even faster. And we know that their rate hikes at this point have not really worked. So they might have to take a different angle. They might have to work with the United States federal government to actually start to institute some policies in order to get inflation down all throughout the country. Right now, part of the reason why we're facing a lot of inflation and a lot of inflationary problems is because of all of the money printing that was done in 2020 and in 2021. We started the year 2020 with around $3 trillion in circulation. Now, in the mid parts of 2022, we have over 20 trillion. So a lot of money was printed, meaning all of the current money was devalued. As you print a lot more money, you need a whole lot more because all of that money gets circulated around and people spend it. Businesses have to raise their prices so people have more money, people buy more things, and prices eventually go up. If wages and incomes don't go up fast enough though, then people can't spend a lot of money, meaning businesses are going to have to cut costs wherever they can, which could mean cutting people. So we can expect to see that on June 13th. Most experts and investors believe that the Federal Reserve is going to have to get a lot more aggressive with their interest rate policies. So we could see a 0.75 basis point hike in July 2022 or even a full percent. It's really going to depend on how high inflation gets or if it decreased in June 2022. Right now, the federal funds rate is around 1.5 to 1.75% in the United States, a far cry from what it was all the way back in 2020 and in 2021, where it was at around 0%. They now have to suck a lot of demand out of our economy, so they raise their interest rates. They make it a whole lot harder for people to go out and buy things like a house and a car because you need a loan in order to get those things. So if you can't get a loan, then you can't buy that thing, and that money immediately evaporates and isn't circulated throughout the economy. Their 0.75% interest rate hike in June 2022 was the most aggressive they have been since 1994, and we can probably continue to see that throughout the rest of this year. future. Speaking of the Federal Reserve, July 26th and 27th is the Federal Reserve's FOMC meeting. This is where they're actually going to tell the public and make the decision on how they are going to raise their interest rates in July 2022. If they see that inflation continues to go up, and so far there is just still too much demand in our economy, well, like I said, they're going to have to get aggressive, and that is the meeting in which we will see that. It's important to note when this actual meeting is, because you're probably going to see the markets go very volatile on those days, either going way up or going way down, depending on what the Federal Reserve does with their policies. If they get really aggressive, over aggressive, like a full 1% basis point hike, well, then the stock market in particular, is probably going to go down a lot. If they pretty much stay the course and do what investors are expecting and anticipating, well, then you probably won't see as much volatility. But I expect those 2 days and that week in general to be very volatile, almost unusually volatile on the New York Stock Exchange. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell will also be talking to Congress and having an open meeting with the press on these days. So you're going to want to look to see what his tone is, what he's talking about in terms of inflation, and what the Federal Reserve's attitude is towards inflation as well. What is his terminology? How is he addressing the problem right now? And how is the Fed going to handle this in the future? That is all going to matter because he is the head of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve has a duty to the American people to kind of talk about inflation in a certain light. They can't scare people, but they also can't outright lie to them and tell them that inflation isn't a problem. They know inflation is a problem, but are they addressing that inflation is a problem? Are they saying, is he specifically saying that inflation is going to last for a very long time, but they are getting even more aggressive with it, and we can expect that in the future? That is all going to matter, especially for your investments and your money management. And then the last major date that you need to keep an eye on is July 28th. This is our initial Q2 GDP reading, and most experts and investors believe that we are going to see that the United States GDP actually shrank in Q2 2022, and we are officially in a recession. That is why this date is probably the most important out of all of the others, and it's the reason why July 2022 is going to basically dictate the future of our economy for the next year or so. If it looks like we are in a recession, well, then this official date will confirm that. We will officially have the numbers on if our GDP is shrinking and what is causing our GDP to actually shrink. So you need to pay attention to this very much, because this could be the highest point of volatility on the stock market and in the real estate market and commodities and cryptocurrency. A lot is going to change. A lot of the tone from the Federal Reserve and also the United States federal government is also going to change. We will officially be in a recession. Most believe we're in a recession right now, but that date will officially confirm it. So watch out for July 28th. And this is especially important because right now at the beginning of July 2022, the Federal Reserve is predicting that we currently are in a recession. So they have kind of revised this over the last few weeks, so we can kind of pay attention over the next few weeks in July if they're going to revise this upward or downward to say we're in not a very bad recession or a horrible recession. In Q1 2022, United States GDP shrank by 1.6%. This came off of 2020 and 2021 where GDP exploded after the recession of 2020. So now if we have a second straight quarter of economic shrinking, that means by definition you are in a recession. Federal Reserve says we're going to have a 1% drop in GDP, meaning that for 2 straight quarters we shrank and we're in a recession. Like I said before, that's going to affect businesses and it's going to affect American people and the amount that people spend in general. Speaking of businesses, we have a lot of earnings reports that you need to pay attention to in July 2022. Some of the biggest ones don't happen till near the end of the month, but you need to pay attention to Tesla earnings, which are releasing on July 25th. In addition, on July 26th, we have Microsoft and Alphabet earnings. The reason these are so important is because these businesses hold so much market cap of the New York Stock Exchange that if they start going down, investors across the board are going to lose money. Those stocks are in ETFs and millions of investors hold shares in those companies. companies. Not only that, but these are some of the biggest companies in the world, and if they start crashing, well, they're probably going to start losing a whole bunch of employees. And it's going to signal things to come for the rest of the businesses on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, I'm not saying that every single company is going to report bad earnings, but if we are entering a recession, then that is probable, and that is basically the writing on the wall, which means that investors are going to be trading stocks in and out for a while during that time. And also, it's a basic benchmark for our economy because Alphabet also controls YouTube and Google, which rely heavily on advertiser spending. If ads are not being run as heavily on YouTube and on Google, then that means businesses are lowering their expectations for the rest of this year and lowering their budgets, so they don't have as much money, and expectations in general predict that they're not going to have as much money. And lastly, those companies boomed over the last 2 years, hitting new record highs and are valued at over $1 trillion. So if they start failing, then that is basically a complete flip of what we have seen over the last 2 or 3 years or so. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how these companies fare during a recession, if they're going to be able to survive as tech giants, or if we're going to see them steadily start to go down. And trust me, if those big tech giants are having problems, then your smaller IPO tech startups, well, they're also going to probably show some pretty big problems, and they might completely go out of business, or they might get swallowed up by a much bigger firm. So those are all of the most important days that you need to track and mark on your calendar for July 2022. Like I said, the reason that all of this is so important is because this month is going to be a benchmark of the general health of the United States. We can now take a 6-month reading of our economy because we have Q1 and Q2 GDP results pending, and of course we can see how inflation is looking 6 months into 2022 and compare it to where it was last year. That's going to give us a benchmark to how fast it's either going to rapidly go up or decrease in 2022. And we can also start to prepare ourselves for more interest rate hikes and a more aggressive Fed for the rest of this year. And we can anticipate lower sales and lower earnings and keep an eye on employment as well. Businesses just don't have enough debt. They don't have enough money coming in because of investor liquidity. So they're going to have to cut costs. And a lot of the times that comes in the form of firing. So we could start to see that unemployment rate going up by the end of this year. And like I said, this is also accompanied by job postings. If we see a lot less job postings, then businesses are just not looking for as many people because they can't afford what they could back in 2021. All of this will show if we're going to have a very long recession, or if it's going to be a very short one, or if we're not even going to have a recession at all and our economy is actually really healthy. So let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen with all of this. Do you think the United States economy is really healthy right now? Do you think we're currently in a recession, or do you think a recession is right around the corner? As always, whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.